sincerely apologize for starting late. Nigeria has millions of young people with certificates, ambitions, and dreams, yet many still struggle to find work or create sustainable livelihoods. At the same time, employers complain that they cannot find people with the right practical skills. So, where exactly is the disconnect? Joining us via Zoom is Vivian Ngozi Ani, business consultant and capital raising and business planning expert. She brings more than 2 decades of experience working around businesses, funding, and enterprise development. You're welcome to the conversation.
Vivian, you're welcome.
Yeah, hi, good morning, and nice to be here.
Okay, what I'm about to begin with might be quite uncomfortable, but are Nigerian youths really unemployable, or are we simply not creating enough jobs for them? Which is which? Can you hear me?
It's the first, actually. I can hear you.
Okay.
I think it's the first, and I will explain why.
Okay.
Could I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, now preparing young people for employment starts from the home. And yes, the workforce is changing. And yes, the Nigerian economy is not as buoyant as it used to be. That is very true. Mm-hmm. But then again, I think the lack of buoyancy in the Nigerian economy has been sort of compensated by what's going on globally, by, global work. What I mean by global work, the rise of remote opportunities in the global workforce. Okay. So I've always said this, there's no shortage of jobs. What you have is a shortage of skills and attitude. Attitude. Right now, a lot of parents make so many sacrifices to send their kids to school, believing that when their kids go to school, they will earn all these fancy degrees, get fantastic jobs, and be able to recoup the cost of what they spent on the children. Now, but the problem is that the workforce, work has changed as we know it. Mm-hmm. When you talk to people of a certain generation, it was normal to finish school, get good grades, get a very good job, get to that job, stay for 20, 30 years, rise through the ranks, and eventually head those organizations. And that's just what work was then. Mm-hmm. But right now, things have changed. Things have changed because you now have a lot of technology in the workplace. Technology in the workplace means that a lot of things that took so much to do before don't take that kind of time anymore. AI has meant that intelligence has become very accessible to everybody. And if you look at how people get good grades in the past, and I think it still works like that today, is that there's a lot of, you're compensated but for how much you can memorize, and then be able to regurgitate everything you memorized when you get to an exam. You're able to repeat all those things that you memorized when you get to an exam. Believing that the more you know, the more valuable you are. But now, all that knowledge that you needed to cram during the exam to be able to do your job or to be able to pass on to communicate to other people, within 2 seconds, AI can give you everything you know, and even doing a lot better in some cases than a human being would. What now that means is that your ability to memorize is no longer an edge. Is no longer an advantage because AI has replaced anybody's ability to memorize. So those days where parents could send children to school, kids get very good grades, and based on their ability to memorize, and based on their ability to get good grades, based on their memorization skills, they're able to get good jobs. Those days are gone and they're never coming back. They're never coming back. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
It's a bit quiet in your end.
I can, Vivian. I like the fact that you said preparing a child for employment starts from the home. What about those schools? Are some of the courses being offered in our tertiary institutions still relevant, with today's realities?
You know what? Another reason why I said that it starts from the home is because, by the time you send kids to school, they're too young to understand how the world works. And in a lot of cases, you find that the parents are the ones making the decisions for them. And, I remember once upon a time, my child is a lawyer. My child is an engineer. My child is an accountant. Those were the kind, my child is a doctor.
He's a doctor.
Those were the kind of dream professions that parents loved. And they would push their kids as they enter school to tilt towards those professions. The problem now with those professions is that a lot of them are highly endangered by AI. Even medical doctors, the medical field used to feel safe. But right now, in the next 10 years, if we go by the predictions, doctors are going to become increasingly irrelevant. So we're living in the world where the old ways don't work anymore, but the parents are still relying on the old ways. Now, let's even get to the school curriculum. Now, these kids enter school. The school is still preparing them for the old world. The old world, like I said, where memorization was an edge. The schools, especially, I don't think, well, let me not say especially, that would not be fair, because it's not just Nigerian schools that have been accused of this. Even schools overseas have been accused of the fact that they've not kept up with what's happening in the world. Today, they've not kept up to the changes that technology has brought upon the world. So what you see is that kids are still going into schools, prodded by their parents to pick certain professions, and even those professions, the curriculum and even the things that the curriculum and the attitude of the teachers is a total disconnect from what's going on now. So increasingly too, people are beginning to question the relevance of schools, quote and unquote, as we know it. So it's not just the parents who are making the mistakes. The schools too are making the mistakes. The employers are complaining that they can't hire people because the two founding, what should I use, linkages, the parents and the schools are not getting it right.
Okay,
So it's not just a problem about curriculum. It's also a problem about how the parents are thinking and how the teachers are thinking and how the schools are thinking. Because the teachers themselves, a lot of them need to get retrained to understand what's happening so that their students can become employable.
All right, still taking it back to the home front and the parents. When we started the show, you highlighted that the problem isn't that there are no jobs, but that the basic skills needed and attitude are the biggest problem. And I want to dwell on the attitude part now. So are you saying that the upbringing, the kind of values instilled into a young person could also be a factor to whether he or she can be employable?
Oh, yes, that's the biggest factor, and I'll tell you why. There was a recent study, I think it was from the Harvard University, I think so, I can't quite remember. It said that the biggest predictor of success, that they did a study that tracked kids, young people to adulthood for how many years? And the biggest sign of success was that the child did household chores. That the adult as a child did household chores. Household chores, cleaning the house, cooking, running errands, When I read the study, I found it very funny. I said to myself, you don't need to do this study to know that this should be a predictor of success. Now, what do we see these days? We see parents doing everything to shield their children from doing housework. I'm not talking about the lower class parents. I'm talking about middle class to upper class parents. It's actually a flex for parents to say, oh, I have 2 housemates who do everything for my children. Now, I have nothing against housemates. Please don't get me wrong. But by the time a child gets to a certain age, 3, 4, that child should start learning how to make their bed. It should graduate, and as they get older, it should graduate to how to cook. It should graduate to how to clean the house. Why? It's because for you to do each of these chores, you need a certain amount of planning, and you need a certain amount of diligence, and you need a certain amount of organization. Now, when you bring up a child and then you tell the child, oh, you don't make your bed in the morning, there's the housemaid waiting to make the bed for you, you don't cook, you don't wash plates, there's somebody who's willing to clean up after you. What happens when the child gets into school? What happens when the child gets into the workplace? They expect those things to follow them into school and into the workplace because they never learned this, basic things as kids. And I have seen a lot of situations. We hire people, especially, youth corpers, because youth corpers are fresh out of school. And then they start to struggle. And, what is going through in our minds is, Didn't you learn this as a child? Didn't you? Aren't they,
Were you not
your
taught at home?
workspace, even your desk, you won't keep it tidy. And then, there are many other things that, if some of them even come in a place like Nigeria, they don't know how to turn on a generator. I have seen that. And then you even look at their attitude towards work, because they've never been forced to do boring work. They're always bored. They're always looking for something to distract them. Normal office work, which is boring, as you know, in many cases, they have an attention deficit disorder because they have never learned how to do boring work. They've never had to plan anything for themselves. So this now translates into how they behave in the workplace. Now, and part of the attitude thing too is that how you relate to people is very important to progress, because you don't, in the workplace, you really don't want to have somebody reporting to you who is supposed to be mentoring and teaching things who has an attitude problem. We've hired people before, and we've watched them insult their mates in the office. We've watched them bully their mates in the office. We've watched them, you leave them for 5 minutes, they see there's nobody around, and they take their legs and then they put on their desk, even when you're there, because they were doing this thing in their homes and nobody ever corrected them. So for them, when they sit in the office, and there's a desk in front of them, they take their legs and put on the desk. And then, if you don't build up good relationships with people, your colleagues, because there's a certain amount of learning that goes on between peers in the workplace, and then there's a kind of learning that's transferred from your bosses who've done it before and who are supposed to be mentoring you. If you cannot build good relationships with these people, it's very, very difficult for you to be able to learn anything at work.
Okay, Vivian.
So I think I have worked with a lot of young people, and I remember there was a time we called for an interview, and I don't know whether maybe I'm being too picky, but a parent actually came to the interview with their child, and this child is in her 20s. And the first thing I said when I saw the parent, I said, "Who are we interviewing?" So no, I came with my child, and I was like, okay, fine. We do know that security issues are ongoing in Nigeria, and maybe it might be a setup. But for crying out loud, to actually walk into the interview room, the parent could have stayed in the waiting room or something. To actually walk in with a child, that's a kind of helicopter parenting that you're not teaching the child how to be independent. So it is very important for parents to teach their kids independence. It's very important for parents to teach their children dignity in labor, and dignity in labor goes with household chores. You can't have a child going through life and all they know understand are housemaids and drivers. They've never learned to do anything by themselves. They come to the workforce and it shows. It shows that they never learned these things at home. The attitude problem.
Okay, now that we have identified the problems of why we are unable to build an army of employable youth, let's start looking at ways to solve it, or find some solutions to it. We see a lot of these children come for internships, apprenticeships, and of course, actual workplace experience. Should we make that all these experiences? Should we make it compulsory? And at what age should this apprenticeship, internships start? Because we see them from secondary school now coming for internships in our own organization. So is that the right way to start building an army of employable youth?
Yes, it is good. And I think Lagos State has an internship program where they're going to do 3 months. It used to be 6 months. And then I think due to financial constraints, because they are the ones that are paying the interns during that period, not the employer. And the whole point of that was they get to the workplace, learn real work skills. And even during that period, some of those employers, for the ones who are particularly good, they keep them on, because if you've mentored and trained somebody for 3 months and you found the person capable, it doesn't make sense to start another round with somebody new if the person is good. Well, employers have been known to retain those people. So that was a very laudable scheme from Lagos State. I don't know if it's still going on. And I think that should be replicated nationwide. But even in that, like I said, no employer wants, the whole point of having someone, even as an intern, that person is taking up space and using office facilities. And the worst thing an employer can face is to have someone who's not adding value. And like I said before, there's so many reasons why someone would be in the workplace and not adding value. Some of them, it's from, it's a home training deficit. Parents didn't put certain things in place. And at times too, of course, I know there are instances where the child is just stubborn. I know that parents try their bit, but there's no impact on the child. But even when you're talking about internships, which is very good, like I said, it cannot make up for the attitude problem. And a lot of that attitude problem, like I said to you, comes from the home.
They even bring it to the organization.
Sorry?
Go on. I said this attitude problem, they also display it at these organizations where they're having their internship.
Oh, yes, they do. They do. And the worst kind of person to work with is somebody that has an attitude problem. Some people, anything you give them is work. Because at home, they never learned to enjoy work. They never, like I said, they never learned to enjoy the boredom of work. They never did. So it is parents that I keep trying to address. And like I said, if you see someone who has skills and has the right attitude, it is very rare you see that they can't find a job. It is rare. So internships are good. Volunteer work too is very good because at times, like I said, not every state has structured internship programs. So when young people see a chance for volunteer work, they should key in. For the first few years you're out of school, you're practically, because of the deficiencies of the school curriculum system, like we discussed before, you're practically of no use to an employer when it comes to adding value to the job. Anybody who takes you when you're fresh out of school is definitely going to add more value than you're going to be able to add when you net off the two. So whether if you don't see a structured internship program where the government can offset some of your expenses, because at times I see parents who are trying to avoid their child looking for a job. They now say, go and do a master's. A master's cannot better the chances of your child getting a job. If your child does not have experience and decides to go for a master's, it's not going to make their job prospects any better. So rather than wasting the child's time and wasting your own money as a parent, going for master's programs that do not necessarily improve your child's prospects, why don't you urge the child to go towards volunteer programs where, in sectors where they want to work. And that way you can fund, rather than fund a very expensive master's program, you can fund that their volunteer work. If the child is good, believe me, they'll want to hire him for kids just to keep him from walking away and going somewhere else. So if for 6 months the child can volunteer, have a deal with the organization that, look, after my volunteering period, please you give me a reference saying I have worked with you and blah 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 to better my chances of getting a job on the outside. And I really think with the right skills and with the right attitude, I keep going back to this attitude program, and this volunteer work. And as long as they're willing to give them a reference, it's like I said, when I see young people who have been looking for a job for a very long time, I know that one of these things is lacking. It's either that or they're very picky. They come out from school, they want to replicate the lifestyle of somebody who's been working for 10, 15 years.
Okay, the time is fast spent, but I really like you to touch on character and competence, because they say again that connections can get you into a room, but your character keeps you in the room. Your competence is what keeps you in the room. And so character somehow also falls on the attitude part.
And I understand where you're emphasizing on this, because I emphasize this all the time. Character is everything. I'd rather have somebody who is not so skilled, but has a positive attitude and has good character. Why? You can train for skills, but you cannot. Once somebody gets to a certain age, that character is formed. You can't change the character. I don't want to. I want to shield identities here, but there was a case where there was somebody that a friend of mine worked with, and the guy had a terrible character. In the end, the guy left the job and moved on to another job. And then some months after he moved on to another job, he came back to apologize to my friend and practically knelt down for my friend, apologized. He said to my friend that whatever, bad prayers she did on his head. We're Nigerians, so we'll understand where I'm coming from. Whatever bad prayers she did on his head, she should call it back, because the place he moved to, that his current boss treats him like an animal. Yes, it gets that bad, because there's some people that you work with in the workforce. You're like, who brought up this person?
Yeah.
Why does this person not understand basic rules of etiquette and good behavior? So character is everything. No matter how well connected you think you are, it is that character that keeps you in the room and allows you to thrive.
Okay, just before we go, what are the skills or opportunities, you know, the young people have today that they're still overlooking?
Okay, there are plenty of them. Let me go for quick wins. You know, when we talk about jobs, there's something we've not touched on, you know, during this conversation. When we talk about jobs, I don't know, is my voice okay? Is it coming too loud or too low?
Yes, it's okay. It's perfect.
Okay, because at times I feel maybe it's coming on too loud. I'm trying to compensate for
No,
the
it's
fact I can't hear
perfect.
you well.
It's perfect. Go on.
It's perfect. Okay, fine. So when we talk about jobs, we get fixated on white-collar jobs. And I'm going to say something that parents don't like hearing, but I have to say it. I don't know if we have enough time for me to make my point. We keep talking about white-collar jobs. Nobody ever talks about blue-collar jobs.
Blue-collar jobs.
See, some children have no business trying to get degrees. Right now, Nigerian universities, from the last data I heard, collectively, they're graduating about 1.7 million graduates every year. Quite a number of people out of that 1.7 million had no business pursuing a university degree.
I agree.
When I see parents, especially parents who are not economically advantaged, they're giving up everything just to send the child to university. In my mind, I'm like, you've sent him to university, he comes out with a degree, right? And because he doesn't have the exposure about the skills that we're talking about, right? And which I'm going to go into the skills. I know you asked a question about skills, but I just wanted to make that point, because skills can be blue collar or white collar. He doesn't have the exposure for the white collar skills. Nobody to guide him, nobody to mentor him. The teachers don't understand what's going on. He comes out, he roams around looking for a job for 5 to 6 years. In the end, he goes back to washing cars. So why did the parent make that sacrifice? So rather than wasting a child's time, there are two classes of skills: white-collar skills and blue-collar skills. If you can't afford the child to go and build up white-collar skills, why don't you look at blue-collar skills? Plumbing is a skill. Electricals is a skill. Each time I talk to my electrician and I talk to my plumber, their biggest complaint is that they cannot get young people who want to do the job. And if you know how much these electricians get paid, if you know how much master masons get paid, but a lot of parents believe that these skills are beneath their children. My child has to have a first degree, has to have a second degree, and has to have all the degrees in the world. Right. What he uses all those fancy degrees if the child cannot earn a living. What he uses it. So as we talk white-collar skills, which I'm going to go into, white-collar skills, learn AI. Learn everything about AI, because even though a lot of AI is hype, but honestly, the impact of AI will change life as we know it in the next 5-10 years. So learn as much as AI as you can. Pick a field where you love. If it is video editing, if it's photography, but pick a skill that's not endangered by AI.
All right.
Because then again, when you talk about skills, you have to pick something that comes naturally to you to some extent, and also something that you are interested enough to stay within the process. So look around your surroundings, find out what people are looking for. If you're the type that white-collar skills are your thing and your parents can afford it, go for the white-collar skills. Like I said, AI is the big one. It's a very, 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 very big one.
All right,
so,
Vivian, would need to leave this conversation here. Time is fast spent. Maybe would need to do a part 2 of this conversation, building an army of employable youth, because it's a very timely conversation. But we thank you for your time on the conversation and sharing insight on this beautiful topic. Vivian Annie, she is a business consultant and she has joined us via Zoom. Thank you so much for your time. All right. Building an employable generation requires more than certificates, and our guest has, explicitly laid it out. It requires more than just getting the certificates: character, attitude, competence, you name it. But again,
anyway, I have 3 kids. I know the ones that will go for masters. The one that will, I know the ones that I will not even encourage to go and do any masters. Please let us go and learn work. After your first degree, let us go and learn work.
And that's where intentional parenting
Ah,
comes in.
no.
Because you know your child.
Because when I was talking to one of them, I said, okay, when I finish my degree, you know, I'll go for master's. I said, no masters. Let's go and learn work.
All right, the conversation continues. Stay with us.